The YSL Y line, which one to avoid and which one to get. The YSL Y line is one of the most versatile fragrance lines ever. And some are absolutely fantastic, but not all of them are worth it. And one of them is the absolute best. I'm gonna quickly break down what they smell like, how they compare to each other, and then rank them from my least favorite to the one I think is the best. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one you should buy and the ones you should skip. Before I begin, these comparisons take a lot of time to make, so a like is highly appreciated, thank you, and please do consider subscribing if you're brand new here. Let's start with the original Y Eau Toilette and work our way to the new Y Iced Cologne. So if you're a subscriber, then you know that I actually bought the original Y Eau Toilette by mistake, thinking I was going to buy a backup bottle of Y Eau Toilette 2022. But that was a good mistake because I actually really like it, and the OG is one of my most complimented in the line. So when you spray it on, you get a fresh and bright opening with a prominent dose of spicy freshness from ginger. You also get a juicy bergamot, and the intensity of that freshness is boosted by aldehydes. Then you get an additional gorgeous dose of aromatic freshness from geranium and sage. So it's basically a mix of spicy, citrusy and aromatic freshness with a dry down that's softly woody. And to me stands out with its freshness and the aldehydes. Let's quickly talk about the core of it and what I call the signature Y Scent DNA. It's basically an aromatic heart with a bit of woodiness, which is something we can find pretty much across the line. That to me is essentially the Y DNA. They do switch that aromatic heart around for different Ys. Sometimes it's lavender, sometimes it's sage, sometimes it's both, and sometimes it's my favorite trio of sage, geranium and lavender. But that aromatic heart is very much part of what Y is. The woody side can vary a bit as well, and sometimes it's very noticeable and sometimes it's quite soft. The OG Y Edt together with the new version of Y Eau Toilette, Y Eau Fraiche and Y Iced Cologne are among the freshest in the line. I don't know exactly what it is about the OG Y Eau Toilette that makes it such a compliment getter, but I do think it's the use of aldehydes and its very noticeable freshness that makes people react to it. The vibe is a mix of something sexy and something with a bit of class and elegance to it, but done in a casual way. Y Eau Parfum is probably the most well known in the YSL Y line, and I do feel they changed a lot if you compare it with the OG, and I also feel they made it even better. It's also built around that core of an aromatic heart with a bit of woodiness, but it's definitely different. It's also fresh and woody like the OG, but definitely a bit less fresh and instead more woody. So a more balanced scent, which is why it's one of my favorites for everyday use. But a big difference is that it has the fruitiness from fresh apple together with a soft dose of sweet tonka. Its fruitiness and sweetness together with a prominent dose of woodiness does make it quite different compared to the OG. More balanced for sure, and at the same time even more mass appealing and versatile. I think it stands out with its almost perfect mix of freshness, woodiness with a bit of sweetness, and even though pretty much the entire line can be used throughout the year, I do feel this is among the very best for everyday use. It's a sexy vibe full of energy and simply put a great fragrance. Y Eau Parfum is among the top complimenters and top performance in the line, but more on that a bit later. YSL Y Live, I still don't know. Change things around a bit with a toned down and in a way smoother dose of citrusy freshness. Y Live also has orange blossom, giving it a bit of floral freshness together with an aromatic heart. It's still fresh, but a bit different compared to the rest. The biggest twist to me is the orange blossom together with a soft dose of cacao with a bit of woodiness at the base. It's not an overly intense dose of cacao though, but definitely enough to make it different. And it can almost be described like a slimmed down version of Y Eau Parfum, but with a twist to its freshness, sweetness and woodiness. Not sure why it was discontinued or why YSL Y Live sometimes gets a bit of hate in my comments, but I do enjoy the twist it has. And to me it stands out thanks to its smooth floral freshness and the cacao. I think the vibe here is a bit on the flirty side. Next up we have Y Eau Fraiche, which I think the new Y Iced Cologne is a bit sort of inspired of, but more on that a bit later on. Y Eau Fraiche is one of the absolute freshest versions of Y, and I do feel Y Eau Fraiche keeps that signature aromatic heart and soft woodiness, but in a more intensely fresh mix with smooth lemon and bright mint together with a spicy fresh kick from ginger. To me stands out in the line with its gorgeous dose of minty freshness and smooth lemon. I think it's clean, bright and refreshing with a juicy dose of freshness. Out of all the YSL Ys, this together with a couple of hours is the one I'm most likely to reach for on a warm summer day, but more on that later. And it's also one of my most complimented intensely bright freshes. And the vibe here is summer and sunshine in a bottle in an all white outfit. Moving on to Y Le Parfum, this is the OG Y Le Parfum. I'm gonna get to the newer Y Le Parfum in a short while. This is where I think YSL wanted to create something with a bit more depth to it, and also something that is more based on the Eau de Parfum. I think it's a darker, richer, more nuanced and a bit warmer version of the Eau de Parfum, but it's in no way a warm scent. It's basically a version of the Eau de Parfum with the Eau de Parfum's gorgeous dose of apple and tonka, but with a modified dose of freshness and a slightly different dry down. Freshness and woodiness with an aromatic heart, and the whole thing has a softly, almost gourmand kind of sweetness to it. I don't know exactly what it is about the Le Parfum that makes it sort of a pop in a different way compared to the Eau de Parfum, but it might just be the lavender. I absolutely love lavender, and I do think they pretty much nailed that part in here. I think YSL tweaked it in just the right places to make it different, but still keep all the good stuff. But I do think it's the more mature, slightly sort of a darker, and definitely the more classy and elegant version of Y Eau de Parfum. And to me it stands out thanks to its incredibly sexy combo of a richer version of that core YSL Y scent and its sweetness, and it's another compliment getter. Moving on to the second version of Y Eau de Toilette, which ended up replacing the OG, and it grew on me so much that I ended up buying a bottle of the OG Eau de Toilette by mistake when I was supposed to buy a backup bottle of the newer one. It's basically a very fresh and very bright take on that Y Scent DNA. Intensely fresh, but part of what made me want to buy a backup bottle of it is that it's so incredibly smoothly fresh and softly sweet. They took the original, made it more modern, definitely a lot smoother and rounder, and added a bit of sweetness to it. It's among the freshest YSL Ys, and when comparing it to the freshest ones, I do think it stands out with its very smooth and mass appealing dose of freshness. The other intensely fresh ones tend to pull in different specific fresh directions, whereas I do feel all the different fresh parts of this are quite well balanced. To me the vibe here is definitely sexy done in a casual way. Y Eau de Toilette 2022 is my most complimented, most fresh YSL Y. Moving on to Y Eau de Parfum Intense, which basically takes the Y Eau de Parfum scent in a smoother, more woody, less sweet and less fresh direction. It has a gorgeous version of that Y aromatic heart, but this is definitely a more woody and less fresh take on it. And I do feel it has the softly earthy scent to it as well. I think both the scent and the vibe is different compared to the Eau de Parfum, and I do feel it's a more mature and elegant take on it. And I do feel it's the woody side of it that makes it stand out in the line. I don't think it's a complex scent, and I do feel Y Eau de Parfum Intense is for someone who wants a masculine fragrance with a mix of aromatic freshness and woodiness. Y Elixir came out after Y Eau de Parfum Intense, and it's the first time I was a bit disappointed. It promised a deep woody spicy take on Y with high quality raw materials and precious oud of natural origins, and all that in an extreme concentration. I knew it would be something extremely oudy or extremely anything really, because extreme is really not what this line is about. This line is all about maximum mass appeal and something that's quite well balanced regardless of which direction a fragrance goes in. Y Elixir to my nose is mostly about lavender, which is a note I absolutely love, and I do think the lavender in Y Elixir is done in a good way. That lavender sits on top of a very soft dose of oud, and the whole thing is quite soapy and a bit ambery. I love the scent of lavender, and I do think it smells good, but it's not about what I'm getting here, it's what I feel it doesn't deliver on at all. I do not think it's a deep woody take on Y. Y Eau de Parfum Intense and Y Le Parfum are both a lot more woody. I also feel it fails to deliver on the precious oud. So what you're paying for here is basically lavender, and while the lavender smells good, I do think you can get more exciting lavender focus scents for less than what you pay for Y Elixir. I also feel it goes a bit too soft, too fast, at least on my skin. The vibe here is definitely a classy and elegant one. The newer version of Y Le Parfum was released in 2025, replacing the previous Y Le Parfum. And to me it opens up with a citrusy kind of freshness. It has a bit of that core Y aromatic freshness to it, but it does feel a bit toned down in here. And that freshness sits on top of a piney, slightly resinous and slightly smoky kind of freshness that's also a bit ambery warm. And once again, it's a Y that's a mix of aromatic freshness and woodiness. It feels very familiar, and to some, Y Le Parfum 2025 will be a bit too similar to previous releases. But I think it smells good, and I do think it stands out with its prominent sort of a piney kind of woodiness. Y Le Parfum 2025 is definitely not groundbreaking in any way, and I do not feel it's better than Y Le Parfum, but it's a good woody masculine scent that's versatile. The vibe of Le Parfum is more mature, more classy and more elegant. And the new Le Parfum together with Y Eau Parfum Intense are probably the two more sort of a mature, classy and elegant ones in the line. Moving on to the new Y Iced Cologne, and this is basically Y once again taken in a very fresh direction. And together with Y Eau Fraiche and Y Eau Toilette 2022, it's definitely among the most fresh in the line. And it could almost be described as a bit of the minty freshness from Y Eau Fraiche, but made in a way a bit more minty. And with a bit of Y Eau Toilette, but with a herbal kind of freshness on a softly woody base. Once again, we get that Y DNA with an aromatic heart and a bit of woodiness, but this is definitely a bit of a twist to that DNA. You can clearly, at least to my nose, smell that this is a Y scent. But its focus on an intense green, minty and aromatic freshness does give it quite a twist. And I do think it's for someone who wants a Y that's intensely fresh. Comparing Y Iced Cologne to Y Eau Toilette 2022, I do feel that the Eau Toilette has a more balanced kind of intense freshness. So both are intensely fresh, but I do feel that the EDT is a bit more balanced. It's supposed to last 12 hours, but on my skin it doesn't do that. So let's quickly talk about usage and performance before ranking them all. So the reason why some of my absolute favorite fragrances for everyday use are in this line is because the line overall is perfect for that. And I do think most of them can be used throughout the year. But the three freshest ones that are absolutely perfect for summer are Y Eau Toilette 2022, Y Eau Fraiche and the new Y Iced Cologne. The three I think are best for everyday use are Y Eau Parfum, Y Eau Parfum Intense and Y Le Parfum. The one I tend to reach for the most whenever I want to smell good to most people in most situations is Y Eau Parfum. The ones I rotate between when I want a more classy vibe is Y Eau Parfum Intense and the two Le Parfums. The new EDT has been one of my favorites for the gym and when I want a lighter take on that Y DNA. And Y Eau Fraiche has been part of my summer rotation since I bought it. The new Iced Cologne will be put to use for both workouts and on warm summer days. So let's quickly talk about the performance. With the exception of Y Eau Parfum and Y Le Parfum, I do feel most of them have sort of a similar performance. And the performance overall is above average but not strong. Y Eau Parfum and Y Le Parfum are two of the top performers with the kind of performance that could almost go into something that could be described as strong. But I absolutely do not feel there are any beast mode scents in this line. I do want to add that I for quite some time thought that some of them disappeared a bit too fast. But the more I've used them all, the more I feel that the longevity is not as bad as I initially thought. So now I'm gonna rank them and share why I rank them in this way. And it was very tough to rank the YSL Y line. Not so much because I feel they are all masterpieces, because I don't, but more because they are basically doing the same thing, which is mass appeal and versatility, but with some variations. Yes, some go more in a specific direction than others, but overall these all share a similar core and style, but with a bit of a twist to each release. Overall, I truly enjoy the line, and just because I rank one higher than the other doesn't mean that the other one is far behind. With one exception, my least favorite is without a single doubt YSL Y Elixir. I know it's the favorite of many, but it's mostly about lavender. And while I love the scent of lavender, I do feel Y Elixir lacks a bit of excitement. And yeah, where's the oud? I was going back and forth on which would come next, the YSL Y Live or the new Y Le Parfum. Tough choice, and I think Y Live is very underrated, but I am going to put it next with Y Le Parfum just ahead of it. The OG Y Edt takes 7th place. I think it's so underrated. It puts a smile on my face whenever I spray it on, and it's among the top compliment getters in the line. And it's not far behind the next one, but I gotta rank them all, and this is where the Eau Toilette lands. The battle of 6th and 5th place was between the two most intensely fresh ones in the line. This was a tough one because I really enjoy the new Y Iced Cologne, and Y Eau Fraiche is so friggin' good on warm summer days. But in 6th place comes YSL Y Iced Cologne. I think it loses some of its magic a bit too soon, whereas Y Eau Fraiche has a more nuanced kind of freshness that keeps on going for longer. So in 5th place, YSL Y Eau Fraiche, it keeps getting tougher, and top 4 are all absolutely fantastic scents. This is what I want to hear from you, by the way. How would your top 4 or top 3 look like? Let me know in the comments, and please drop a like on this video. Thank you, I really do appreciate it. So top 4 is when I truly realized there's been a change to some of my absolute favorites. My number 4 used to be in my top 2 for quite some time. In 4th place comes Y Eau Parfum Intense. I talked about the Eau Parfum Intense and the Eau Parfum so much, I recommended both so many times, often side by side. And both are without a single doubt among some of the very best mass appealing, versatile, everyday kind of fragrances for men. But when comparing my top 4 side by side, the Eau de Parfum Intense gets pushed to 4th place. In 3rd place comes the one I know is considered an absolute masterpiece by many. And again, the margins between each ranking in the top 4 is so small. The OG Y Le Parfum takes 3rd. I do feel it's a great fragrance though. And I also feel it's one they should have kept in the line. But there's a reason why I went out and bought the wrong bottle of Y Eau de Toilette when I wanted a backup bottle of it. The newer Y Eau de Toilette has grown on me so much since I bought it. I now have this smaller bottle and a bigger one, and it's just so good. A super smooth dose of freshness with a bit of sweetness. It's got a sexy fresh vibe, but with a casual kind of feel to it that I think is really nice. And it all comes down to Y Eau de Toilette versus Y Eau de Parfum. Both are incredible, but also quite different. And the sweet and fruity side of the Eau de Parfum and how it's blended with its freshness and woodiness is absolutely fantastic. But after going back and forth so many times between these two, I am going to say that right now Y Eau de Parfum secures 1st place. To me, it's slightly more addictive. It's always been in my rotation of versatile fragrances, and it's a compliment monster I absolutely love wearing. And to me, Y Eau de Parfum is the best YSL Y. Now, I really want to know how you would rank the YSL Ys and which YSL Y you think is the very best. Make sure you put that in the comments. Please drop a like and subscribe for more. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And make sure you check out my other videos over there.